to have somebody who understands technology. And welcome, folks, to the third of our World Whisky Talks, the third online version of this. And once again, looking at some of the issues which are addressing the whisky community around the world these days. And we have a wonderful international panel, despite what some people think in Germany, an international panel of experts, because this season is usually incredibly mad because all of us are racing around between London and Paris and all points east and west and in the middle at whisky shows every single week and enjoying ourselves and catching up with folk, etc., etc. But obviously this year is extremely different. And we thought that it'd be an interesting topic to have to look at what the whisky show is in a generic sense, what it has become, how it may evolve in the future, because things will never quite go back to what they were, I suspect. And also, importantly, because the whisky show is such an important element in education about whisky, what the role of the changing role of the brand ambassador is likely to be in the post-COVID world. And an amazing panel we have for you tonight, folks. Looking at the top of my screen, we have Don Davies, MW, buyer at Specialty Drinks, Whisky Exchange, and everything else, who also organised the marathon, which was the virtual whisky show, which I'm still cursing her for. No, it was great fun. And so it's both fun. I really wanted to speak to Don because this was undoubtedly the most ambitious and crazy virtual show as yet, and probably ever. So to get some insights into that. We have Gemma Patterson, who spent the entire day speaking to people around the world online. So thank you so much for coming tonight, Gemma. Gemma is the global brand ambassador for Balvenie and took over from Dr. Sam Simmons, who is sitting there in casual gear, as only a Canadian can, although no denim, which is unusual for a Canadian.
Boots.
There we are. Sam left his ambassadorial role and is now head of whisky at Atom Brands, Master of Malt, but also has been very, very active online in an educational way. So it was good to get Sam's insights into what it was like being an ambassador in the old days and how things might evolve. And finally, from Gothenburg, we have Stanley Wong, who organises a great beer and whisky festival there, to give us an insight into what is happening there, especially in Sweden, where the COVID restrictions are somewhat different to what we experienced and indeed are still experiencing in the UK and probably across the rest of Europe. So anyway, without any more ado, how are you all doing? How has it been for you, all this COVID stuff, Gemma?
Yeah, there's definitely been highs, there's been lows. Getting used to absolutely a new sort of way of working has been very strange. I've not, for quite a few years now, I've been in an ambassadorial role since early 2016. And so since then, really, 60% of my time roughly on the road, a lot of travel. So this year, I haven't been anywhere since early March. This is the longest stretch I've had in quite a few years of not traveling, of having a solid routine. And I've honestly really embraced that. It's been great. Kind of having get no early mornings, 5 a.m. flights, although I say that. And my colleague over in Australia, Ross Blaney, had me going live at 7:30 this morning. Nightmare. But I've been embracing late mornings and finishing at a reasonable time in the evening and just, having a routine. So that's been brilliant. And having all sorts of different experiences virtually, some horrific and some absolutely brilliant.
Well, it sounds, a curate's egg. Some of it bliss, and we'll see.
There's been, I'm sure we've all experienced it by now, that kind of panic of is the tech going to work? Is my Wi-Fi is sometimes great, sometimes terrible. So you just have, I think there's this like internal panic sometimes with a lot of this stuff, because there's a lot that we can control, but there's a lot that we really can't control. So you just kind of have to embrace it sometimes.
Yeah. Well,
take
great.
A breath.
Stanley,
Yeah.
So how's it been for you over there in Sweden?
It has been up and down. I run a company called Sweden Beverage Fairs, and we arrange fairs in Sweden, and we have 9 fairs, and 6 of those we were planning to have them this autumn, and 3 of them was postponed from March and April to October and December, and I had 3 ordinary fairs which is also postponed. So it has been tough, very tough, up and down, and the thing is that we don't know when we can open again, and especially if I only work with fairs, beverage fairs, with a lot of people, so it's very, very tough.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to hear that, because it's an absolute nightmare. You've built such a great business, and I know in Sweden there's such absolute passion for whiskey, and people love the fairs over there. So it must be frustrating for them, but also for you in terms of running a business.
Absolutely, and the fair we postponed was planning to arrange 3rd and 4th of April, and we moved it to 30th and 31st of October, which is tomorrow. And now we will wait and see. We want to have the beer and whiskey fair in Gothenburg in the end of next year, but it's not easy. It's a lot of companies who wants to have fair at the same time.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed for you, and we're going to explore some of these topics as we move along. Sam, you've spent more time with the kids, but what's it been like in general?
They've had to suffer more time with me as well, and we've seen each other as full 360 beings, which has its pluses and negatives. And Stanley, having done a lot of ambassadorial work in Sweden, the appetite for fairs will not be diminished in spite of this. One of the most avid groups of whiskey lovers in the world, I think, in Sweden. So many clubs and enthusiasm to get together and to be together and to enjoy this amazing drink. It's been an adjustment, Dave. We've spoken, I think, from the first week. We've been in touch through various, whether professional or just keeping in touch. How are things going? I know that my colleagues who have more strictly ambassadorial type roles really had to learn new skills. And I know Gemma could probably relate to this, but I have a bunch of friends from across different company lines working not just in whiskey, but ambassadorial roles in booze. And they're hired for their conviviality, their ability to meet new people easily, their ability to swipe a credit card without cutting their hand, things like this that are very important skills. But so suddenly they have to be TV producers and web developers and technologically advanced and actually good at speaking to a fucking laptop, excuse me. And that's not for everyone. It's a very strange thing. And people turn their cameras off in meetings or in Zoom calls. We can't see the guests. It is a strange thing and a real hard adjustment. And I know a lot of people who sadly have either lost their jobs or chosen to stop because they could see the challenges ahead and feared for the worst. So it is a crazy time. I do feel fortunate on a personal level to still be all right and still have my family, as you mentioned, and everything else. But it has been a very trying time for sure.
Thank you. Finally, Dawn, how's it going? I mean, because you use your speed. We were joking beforehand, before we went live, that essentially you don't have a home anymore. You just seem to permanently be in a studio, surrounded by bottles and talking online. How has that been? And also, I think we'll then move into tell us about the virtual whiskey show and how you started organising that.
So I think for me, I used to work in restaurants back in the day. I was a som, so I was used to doing 90 hours a week. And then, you join retail and you think, less than 90 hours a week, 60 is great. I'm back up to 90 hours a week. I've been back up to 90 hours a week. I actually took a half day off for the first time since January, a couple of weeks ago. And it has been actually, it's been a really interesting time. It's been a time where I've had to challenge myself hugely. I am a person with enormous energy, but to be consistently buoyant, to try and bring people along the journey, and actually to be super creative. It's actually been a really interesting time, because I think the people that have embraced it, the people that have gone after it, the people who have really owned this, and who will actually, in the long run, benefit from it, are those that have gone out and had bollocks to do things differently and gone out and owned it, be it in the bars. I'm wearing a tiki shirt from Trader Happiness because Sai had to shut his bar and he decided he was going to make t-shirts. Anyone that's gone out there and just done something different and gone, in my phrase, gone rogue, they're the people that are really going to benefit from this. I think there's been a lot of people that have been too afraid. They've, especially the big companies, actually, which has been quite interesting. They've kind of stepped back, but actually those that have attacked it and really gone out there will win the day on this. And for me, the most important thing that I've kind of brought from this whole experience is we are such an amazing community. We are the strongest community in the world, be that whiskey, drinks, restaurants. We're going to bring each other through this. And I think that's been super interesting. And you've had to be super creative. It's not been easy. And I don't think it's going to continue to be easy. For Sam's point, I remember the first virtual tasting we did, and I did it on a rum, and there was two of us, and we were sort of talking back and forth. Normally you come off a tasting with consumers and you're like, you're excited, you're like, you've got loads of energy, and I just remember both of us went into my office and we sat there and we didn't speak to each other for 15 minutes because we were so exhausted. And it was Mitch, which me and Mitch not talking is kind of the hardest thing on the planet, because we always talk, but we were so exhausted because this was such a new format and you just got no feedback. You got nothing back from the consumer. And that was really hard. And adjusting to that has been challenging.
Yeah. And about virtual whiskey shows. So what was the genesis for that? Because, and how did it grow into the beast that it became? I'm going to ask Gemma and Sam what they then thought of the beast that it became.
I have to give Sam, well, I never give Sam credit, but I'm going to give Sam credit. Sam and the Boutique boys were insanely awesome, and I have to give them fucking 10 hands up. It was incredible what they did. Essentially, it started, so we embraced virtual pretty quickly. We realized that we had to own that space and really kind of go after it and be quite ambitious with it. And, like Stanley, we have quite a lot of shows throughout the year. And the first one was Cognac Show, which we had to cancel because it was April. And even though we were desperate to kind of keep going with it, we really quickly, in about 2 weeks, turned it around and did virtual. And actually got quite good feedback. It was very basic. I mean, super basic. It was me just talking to a camera, doing a couple of 101s and stuff, and it was a couple of pre-records. And as soon as we did it, we got a quite nice feedback from it. I was like, look, I don't know what's going to happen with this show. I want to keep going with it. It is something that I'm passionate about. I want to bring the industry together. We have to have something to look forward to. But I thought, let's hedge our bets. Let's go partially virtual. And also because we realized quite quickly that we probably wouldn't have our international customers. And there were people that were probably shielding and et cetera that weren't going to be able to there. And I want to keep those people happy. I want to kind of embrace them. So I said, okay, let's go partially virtual. And we were talking to the venue about filming, and we were there. And as kind of time grew closer, it was like, and actually I talked to you pretty early on, and I said, look, Dave, let's come up with a couple of talks. I said, we'll do about 20, 30 talks. It'll be super easy, we'll do it over a week. We'll do the main weekend, which will be kind of live, and then we'll do maybe a couple of talks a night for the rest of it. And then kind of it got closer and closer, and I was like, I have to make the call. And actually it was the hardest decision I've ever made. There were a lot of tears, because actually I felt like I was letting down people. I was like, oh my God, I've been promising we're going to do this. And I thought, okay, I have to just go rogue and do something uber amazing. So we'd been looking at platforms quite early on, and we discovered Hopin, which was, we felt, a really easy platform to use. You didn't have to know how to move avatars around and stuff like that. And it was a really nice platform to work with. And I had a couple of chats with you. We came up with some really interesting topics to talk about. And then I just started doing some tasting packs. And what started as 30 talks and tastings turned into 100 tasting packs and 400 talks over 8 days. And I know you all hate me, and I'm really sorry, but I actually think what we did was game changing. I think we've done something that no one could or was going to ever do. I'm super proud of my team. They were amazing. To turn around something so quickly and produce something so freaking awesome. You know, my heart goes out to how amazing they were and what they did. You know, they were incredible. And yeah, I've killed Dave Broom. I've killed Billy Abbott. Yeah, I killed myself.
We still love you, Don. You know, Stanley. I mean, just hearing about this, and obviously, you know, fearing for you know, you're fearing for your entire business. Is going online an option for you? Do you think?
Yes, in the near future, absolutely. we first we pull all the strengths to the new date, which was October, tomorrow. But after that, we feel that online is something that we will try in the future, in the near future. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And tastings, because the Swedish government has allowed people to allowed to have 300 people sitting with 1 meters from each other.
Oh.
So, and that came for 1 week ago. So it's bigger tastings too. Absolutely.
Right. So there is some degree of hope there, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And would you have any restrictions in Sweden in terms of getting like tasting packs out to people? So, you know, if you can't do all the shows and.
No, we that is restrictions because the Swedish government have the liquor stores. So you have to buy the liquor in the liquor stores, and you have to buy big bottles. So yeah, it's a little bit difficult in Sweden.
Gemma, with the whiskey show, the virtual whiskey show, what was your kind of takeaway of how that mad event went? And you know, is it an indication? I think more, you know, rather than saying, "Oh yeah, it was amazing," is it an indication of how things may be over the, you know, for the next few years?
Yeah, I think first of all, Don, it was so brave of you to put that together, and it sounds like all the work that you guys put into it is absolutely incredible. Like, just it was our my colleague Alwyn, who's our UK ambassador, who was leading it from Above Any perspective, and for weeks in advance, you know, Alwyn and I were back and forth on the phone, like trying to get together content, think about what we could do. We had a whole plan to go and do some live stuff from the distillery, and then we kind of went into like a second sort of lockdown at the distillery and couldn't get anyone on site. But you like forced us to start thinking creatively about, right, we have this time to fill, we have this opportunity to engage with lots of people, and so we thought, right, how are we going to do this? So we had like planned to kind of go live to Dufton, and do some pre-records, which we couldn't do. But I know it kind of got us to sort of look in our coffers and think about, like, because, you know, from a brand perspective, we produce so much content, and a lot of it for us is with Sam as well. So it's like kind of looking at stuff that we already have, and kind of bringing that back out instead of going and starting again and filming more new stuff. In fact, we have a lot of interesting things that we filmed over the years with our distillery teams, so kind of drawing out old stories and things that we've talked about that are still like really relevant, to be able to use in that kind of platform, and then making that available for everybody. I know that also quite a few of the team, so we had like, you sort of, our entire team across the world supported Alwyn as well. So like they came in and hung out in the booth with Alwyn, so there was like an opportunity to connect with like Neil in LA, and like Ross in Australia, and Jamie in Canada. They all, who I think is watching, she's so shout out to Jamie, she's joined us today's evening. But yeah, it was an opportunity for them to come and be a part of it, when normally like it would just be Alwyn, maybe myself, like a couple of us at above any stand. Whereas this way, yeah, we're able to kind of connect people and our team across the world, which that's such a special thing.
So the nature of the connection was different, but in some ways you maybe even reach more people, but in a slightly
yeah. It's a really funny one, isn't it? Because this like way of like when you were saying you're kind of Dawn, you were saying you were absolutely exhausted just talking to like we're just talking to devices all the time, and it's trying to make that real connection. So to be a great storyteller, you draw off the energy in the room, you feel like what your audience is feeling. So then how do you then take that and implement that when you're talking to a device and a screen? So I've like, you know, we've thought a lot about this and like trying to kind of really imagine like who you're talking to, and take like someone, think of like the perfect audience that you've spoken to in person. So like from previous whiskey festivals, and just trying to like bring that to mind while we're doing things like this. It's we're all learning new skills, and it can be so exhausting, which you'd think it would be easier, but
yeah, it moves. I mean, Sam, I mean, how are you finding people are engaging with this? And can you even judge how they're engaging with this? Or you know, as Gemma was saying, you know, all of us, even now, all we are doing is just speaking to our own computer. You know, you can't read the room. You know, you can't get a sense of how to pitch. You know, when to tell a joke, when not to tell a joke. In your case, you know.
Thank you, Dave. No, that is the central question. I think when you invited me to this, and then when Zoe sent around, you know, the talking points and what we were going to try to discuss, that's what jumped to my mind. And I've been thinking about it in an event that we're going to be doing in November. I've been thinking about this idea of it's not just what we're creating. So of course, you know, we all jumped into gear, and when the lockdown happened, we started creating, you know, Instagram Live or live Facebook things, or trying to do online tasting with tasting sets that the Whisky Exchange has or Master Malt sells. And that's one way, but it's just not quite the same. It's not, the expectation is different of someone engaging with it. So anyway, recently I've been thinking about this quite a bit, because one thing is the content that we create, or the experience that we create. And ultimately it's always going to be slightly disappointing, Gemma, isn't it? Because we don't see the reaction. It feels strange afterwards. And even someone like Dawn can't find words. That's shocking.
Well, sometimes it's refreshing. But, you know.
But you need to
find words, Dave.
But so then it becomes about how are people consuming it. So I started thinking a lot more about what do I watch online? Because there's plenty going on. And I'm still a whiskey geek and a whiskey spirits lover, wine lover, and I watch a lot of stuff online. I consume it. And how do I do it? I do it horizontal on the couch. I do it on headphones only in the car, or, you know, in the Bluetooth. And so we need to start thinking like that. I know Dawn already mentioned about some of our friends becoming really resourceful through this. That's not for everyone, but finding new avenues for revenue. But we're all forced to think like that. What kind of content can we create that's going to suit many more moods? And just one last point, or many more uses, I should say, or applications. The one last point on that is I had comments, and Dawn, again, kudos to you guys for doing this amazing, ambitious, and yeah, you're right, unrepeatable for all sorts of reasons, virtual whiskey show. But I had comments from several people who I've known online for a while via Twitter and that community, who actually have never been to a whiskey show because they are either bedridden or in a wheelchair or have accessibility issues for other reasons, that were so grateful to be able to hear the stories and go to a masterclass with Dave Broom and Dawn Davies, you know, and for the first time, and to order booze at home, to get tasting kits. It was absolutely life-changing for them. And I think that's something we don't think about, is all the people who don't travel around the world to come to the whiskey shows, or who can't.
Thanks, Sam. Dawn, you know, you've done the analytics on all of this. I mean, what have you found? How did people, what were the differences, the most extreme and most obvious differences between the virtual whiskey show and the actual whiskey show? You know, what learnings have you got from this?
No one complained about the food, which was
That's where I was going.
I'll take that as a win. It's been really interesting. We had 1,700 people register and watch. We had 52 different countries, which is more than our normal reach in terms of countries. We always have a lot of countries. That was high. we definitely had a 93% rating on how many people liked the show. We actually had many more people responding to our survey than we normally do, and the feedback was incredible. You know, of course, there was huge learnings. We tried to do too much, and you know, definitely, but we just didn't know. We didn't realize how each brand would really engage in it. What's been very, very interesting, we've had I think it's over 7,000 views of the playlists. So everything we did, we recorded, and we've only made that available to people that had tickets. And so I think what people don't realize is that actually, even when they were on the sessions and on the stands, it may not have felt like there was a lot of people, but the amount of people that are still watching that content and are still taking away that content is huge. I mean, it's been actually insane. And we've been surprised how many people are going back. I had an email today from a really lovely, he's a boy, he's a student in Cambridge, and he emailed me and he said, I just want to say thank you so much. He goes, I couldn't watch a lot during the week because my hall was in lockdown with COVID and we all had to go to the hospital and test. And I was like, great, lovely. But he was like, I've been watching it ever since. He goes, I can't even start to look at the content, but there's so much that I'm interested in, I want to go back and look at. And you know, we had Patricia, who will still be one of my favorite people from a Whisky show, who watched everything, who's still buying tasting packs. And, you know, that's what I think we don't appreciate. You know, you can't record Whisky show physical. You know, you can't reach people in the same way. You know, we've reached out to a huge demographic. That content is still there. We can use that again and again and again, and we will. You know, we want to still make it available to Whisky show people for a bit, because you know they paid for the tickets, blah blah blah. But we will make that out. We have a YouTube channel on it. We can do so much with it. And I think the learns is that I will go, whatever happens next year, who knows, but I would like to go virtual and physical next year.
Right.
Because I do think, as Sam said, being able to reach out to people that are not able to come or can't, or be it physical or distance or what have you. And also, you know, to have a show that's £20 as opposed to £100, and then you can spend what you want on whiskey packs, or you can just listen to stuff. And actually, it was the content. I think we haven't been geeky enough at Whisky Show in the past. Mm-hmm. I actually think the geeky sessions were the ones that people, you know, the balance between the really fun ones like the quizzes and then the real geeky sessions were actually the most successful, which has been a real learning for me.
Yeah, it was a strange one for me as well. It was almost like our architecture didn't work to our advantage in the past, because there weren't seminar rooms, or there were 2 seminar rooms, so therefore you're automatically restricted as to how many classes you can have and what you can talk about. Whereas online, you can be super geeky.
Don't worry, Dave. There's 5 seminar rooms next year.
I can hardly wait. Sam, you jumped in very early on the whole online thing. It was a matter of just tasting stuff out, just flinging stuff out there to see if it worked in those early days. And how have you refined the nature of the content, if I dare say?
Yeah,
it's kind of leading into the tech challenges we have. But I'm just intrigued, you know, as to, you know, you went, shit, we've got to do something. So,
yeah, I suppose so. But also, shit, we've had this stuff in our pockets for years. I was ashamed, so, kind of, you know, like I feel like everyone started downloading Zoom. Well, we already have FaceTime and Messenger and WhatsApp and I don't know, whatever the hell else kids have these days on their phone. It's right in my pocket. We could have been connecting with our friends around the world long before this. And many were, of course, many, I know in the Twitterverse and online world, there are communities that meet and send each other samples and have tastings. But I just sort of realized, well, why? This Instagram Live thing wasn't new. It's easy. I can do it at my desk after lunch with a cup of tea with my colleague, Dave. Let's just start doing that and see, you know, and that's how it started. As simple as that. We did it every day for a while. And I don't know the numbers, but I would say I'd be very generous if I said we had 100 viewers see any of the videos, you know. But I think as Don pointed to there, one of the great benefits of this kind of situation or using this content is, even if it's a live whiskey show, recording it, sending it out live or a seminar like this, it's a lasting asset. So it is worth your time, because someone else will eventually see it if they want, and be able to share it and glean hopefully some information or education, or just relief and respite from the madness that was around us in those early days in March and April.
Yeah. I mean, Stanley, I mean, kind of widening the discussion a little bit here. I mean, there's a theme that's kind of been brought up here, which is we knew this information. We had a lot of stuff that was just kind of snatched away, but we were almost like restricted because, you know, here's an opportunity to actually be creative about it. I mean, how do you think the world of education, whiskey education, is going to be changing?
I think that as you have done, the digital thing is on the way. It was on the way before, but now it will be more important in the future, because in the near future, I think that people won't be crowded. It will take a while when people will go to bigger fairs in the future. So the digital thing it's the future, but at the same time, as Don say, together with physical fairs in festivals in the future.
Yeah. I mean, Gemma, what do you think? What do you think of that? I mean, how is the nature of the beast going to change? You know, how do we continue to educate?
I hope, kind of John, from what Stanley said there, that in the future we can have a good balance between, I mean, this digital thing is not going to go away, and I'm like, I guess at the beginning, I'll be honest, like I was really quite reticent, because there's such a permanency to stuff that we do online, and which is amazing, in that we're creating this catalog of content, but then it's also terrifying. Like, what if you say something wrong, and all my like likes and uhs and ahs, and I'm like, it can be hugely, like most of us sometimes when we see ourselves on camera, hugely critical of that. And it's anytime I hear my voice or see myself on camera, I'm internally just cringing inside, and that is a horrible thing to get used to. But it's also like, it's been great in some ways too, and having this bank of content and connecting with people. So yeah, the digital thing's not going to go away. We're all going to get better at it. We're getting better at it. We're finding more interesting ways to speak to one another and to create things. But then I really do hope, I think we're going to have this craving for having things in person as well. So there will be a balance. I can imagine when things open up and we can start traveling and meeting with one another. And it's when Stanley, you said people can start kind of getting together again, and over in Sweden. So you're looking at that. What I think was it 300 people you'd mentioned.
Yeah. You did go at a meter apart, Gemma, which is exactly the closest you want to be to a Swedish whiskey enthusiast.
I'm thinking of my Times on Viking line right now. But yeah, I think we will really, I'm looking forward to that, being next year, hopefully being able to get out and travel a little bit and see people in person again. And I'm looking forward to a balance between the two.
Yeah.
It's right now, for me, it's very much skewed obviously completely to digital. I've not been, I'm lucky I've got to be able to do it. I've been able to do a little bit of work at the distillery over the last sort of month. So kind of going and seeing my colleagues there. But apart from that, it's just like these four walls.
I mean, what do you think the role of the ambassador is going to be in the future?
I think brands will be looking for those digital skills. Will definitely be important in the future. So and like creatively being able to make little films and interesting content. Yeah, that's.
But what was, I mean, really, Dave, what was an ambassador's role before that? 9 months ago, what is there a single definition of what ambassadorial sort of work is?
Well, I mean, you were an ambassador for a very long time. So what do you think the role was, Sam? And what would you have changed? When you were in that role, what would you have changed? And is it better now? Yeah.
Getting better all the time, Broomy. No, fair, but even you, I thought you'd have an insight there. But I think at Balvenie and at William Grant generally, we're really empowered to be micro entrepreneurs in the area of education and spreading excitement and trying to make enthusiasm contagious. And we had a lot of autonomy to do that in our own way. But I know that's not the same everywhere. We reported to marketing, not sales. And at many companies, ambassadorial roles are reporting to sales, and they are completely built on objectives that are tied to commercial objectives. So even the role is different. So to ask what it's going to be now is a bit complicated, I think, because even Gemma's suggestion that perhaps we could have more digitally trained people who have they're more skilled to the current situation. When things go back to normal, and that person doesn't know how to cold call an account or to go up to a stranger and shake a hand and charm somebody or convince them to buy their 40-year-old whiskey, we'll have a similar problem. So the general thing of an ambassador, I guess, remains the same: a well-rounded person who thinks of whiskey in the right way. And whiskey is about rising tides. It always has been. As Don already said, we are lifting each other up. All of the Whiskey Exchange Master of Malt gave £250,000 to the Drinks Trust. That's just one financial gesture to lift our colleagues. But we are, through the festival that you just had, the Whiskey Show, and through our onward work, we're always trying to say, well, if we lose all of you, who else do we have? So it's a fascinating time, but I think we are dependent, so even more than before, more interdependent on one another.
It's a very good point. And I'm just kind of thinking about lessons that, now that we are in this situation and looking back at what that old world was like. I mean, as an industry, were we too fixated about continually traveling around the world and, having to be there and, like Gemma was saying, getting that 5 a.m. flight, etc. So, all right, this might be a very extreme recalibration, but, are we perhaps moving towards a more sensible middle ground? Sam?
I certainly hope so, Dave. There's someone who's in your amazing film, Amber Light, who once proudly boasted to me about traveling business or first class around the world and having never bought a bottle of whiskey since he worked for the company he worked for as an ambassador. And that's the norm. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying that was like a normal thing. How absurd does that seem now when our friends and colleagues have either lost their roles or struggling with their mortgage or rent? And we're seeing a totally changing face of our high streets and our industry around the world. How frivolous does it seem that I flew to Taiwan for 2 days and came back? That seems nuts now. Whole teams of people have company meetings in Singapore where 200 people from around the globe get together, something that they could do like this for, like Don said, £20 each. So yeah, there is a bit of shame and regret in there, I would say, for me at least personally.
I think you have to kind of think of it on two levels. You have to think of it on the level of our industry and how we've probably abused our industry quite a bit. We've gone through some really great times. It's been like this. Our industry's been like this for a very, very long time. And maybe we've forgotten about our grassroots, what makes us what we were, which is the humanity of it. For me, online retail, why were we never putting the people behind brands first? Why would it be any different in a shop? Why would we not hero the people that make that industry? Be that a brand ambassador, be that the Billy Abbotts of this world. Why would we not put our people to the fore? Because actually, people buy people. They don't buy products. They buy into a belief that something's better. It's going to challenge us. We've got to do a lot more around traceability. We've got to do a lot more about what the consumer wants. I think we forgot about the consumer somewhere along the line in the last 4 years, and we just thought about how freaking special we were. Well, we're not special. The consumer is the special person, and I think maybe this has made us think about that, because now we have to fight for that consumer in a very, very different way. And it's very easy to kind of, have a self-sustaining belief, which is now totally being shattered, and we have to start again. And, and it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be challenging, but I think ultimately it will make us a better industry because we'll put people first again.
Stanley, any thoughts on that and the general ambassadorial role? I mean, how important was it having, in terms of whiskey, having people coming from abroad over to talk about whiskey to your audience?
Very, very important. That's why our visitor comes to the fair, to meet the people behind the products. So very, very important. 100%.
Yeah.
So same to the beer industry or our beer exhibitioner, the brewers. You want to meet the brewers. You want to meet the people behind the products. So brand ambassador is very, very important.
Jimmy, you said you weren't going to miss the 5 a.m. flights, but where I mean, do you think now in hindsight, they pick up on Sam's point that especially you guys, and I still don't understand that how you possibly could do the job that you do. Was there too much of it? Was there too much of that 2-day trip to Taiwan, or 2 weeks in Asia, different hotel every night kind of thing?
Yes, absolutely. I think right now for me, it seems like I feel like in some ways I've been able to be more effective in my job, and connect with more people this way than I would have having flown to Taiwan for that trip for 2 days. This afternoon we had a tasting for a whiskey club in Taiwan with our ambassador over there. It was we had some connection issues, and he couldn't hear me and we couldn't hear them, but we were at the distillery. I was able to kind of go out with my phone and show people at least like what the weather was like in Speyside, what was happening on the floor maltings, like pick up some barley and show them that, and things that like I couldn't do if I was in that room with them in Taiwan. I'm not particularly effective in the job there when you're working with someone who's translating everything that you say, and you've been in that situation many times, Dave, and it's I think
you can't tell jokes really.
Don't even attempt it. But I can see in the future there's going to be a lot less travel for me for sure, and I feel I'm very fortunate in that I'm secure in this job, and again, like Sam said, supported in kind of putting a bit of my personality into it and doing like what I'm comfortable with. And I know that's not the case for everybody, and it's a really valid point in that there's no kind of set definition of what an ambassador is. It's like a personal thing, and it's going to be different dependent on what the requirements are from your employer, because it's wildly varies for us all.
But there was something you said earlier on, which was this thing about reading the room. The fact that we're talking screen. So I just wondered what techniques you have now developed to try and get that amazing personality across through the flat screen. What tricks have you learned?
What tricks have I learned?
How do you do it? Because you're still talking to the Taiwanese audience.
So a few weeks ago, I've worked a little bit with a storytelling group who are London based. They're absolutely incredible. If anyone wants to look them up, they're called the Embers Collective. You can listen to some podcasts and things that they've made. And we've had some interesting discussions with them, because it's sort of similar what we're trying to achieve. And they've spent their lockdown telling stories through their devices as well, when they would normally they thrived on having that intimate, like being in the center with a circle of people around them as they're telling stories. And so we had I recently kind of was lucky to have a whole workshop with them, and they took us through their experience as storytellers, and connecting with people and telling their stories. And we were chatting about how you can, when you have a sea of faces or blanked out screens in front of you, and you can be put off thinking, oh, that person's not listening, or you've got like people kind of chatting and doing and stuff in the background, and it's just trying to zone out of all of that. And I said earlier on about that, think of your perfect audience, and actually for me, I think of like I'm speaking to my mum. My mum is I'm lucky. My mum's an incredible woman, and she is so wise, and she listens to I mean, she'll or pretend to listen to everything that I'm saying, and I can phone her anytime and chat through anything with her. So I like would picture if I'm speaking to an audience like that, where you've not got one person that you can focus in on, everyone's all over the place, then I just really imagine I'm chatting to my mum and trying to kind of be casual and connect. Someone else had said that they imagined they were chatting to the room at Victoria Whisky Festival. So it's a festival I think a few of us have gone to. It's a really lovely festival, very warm, like very friendly, lovely Canadians. And so they imagined they were chatting to that room at the Victoria Whisky Festival. So I think like trying to kind of make things real.
That's
helpful.
great. Yeah, I mean, Sam, Don, Stanley, Dave, what tricks and techniques have you picked up for trying to break this wall of screen? Who would like to pick that up?
Well, we mentioned the Instagram stories that we started doing, or not stories, what's it called? Instagram Live that Dave Worthington, our boutique brand ambassador, and I started doing. We initially just said, you need to have color. It needs to be bright because it's a visual medium and it needs to be visual stimulating. We're all spending our time on conference calls now. The last thing we want to do is at night is feel like we're having a conference call, and you're welcome for the beautiful setup. But so we immediately said new hat every day. So we set yourself a challenge. You had to have a new goofy hat. We would make a stupid game, silly games where we would someone would have to draw out a distillery, try to give a clue, just things that were engaging and that someone could latch on to, even if they only popped in for 5 seconds, just to make with the, like Don so rightly said, with the consumer, in this case, the consuming the information, the consumer in mind. Like, what would I like to watch? What would keep me tuned in? I can watch two absolute experts speaking about something, but if it looks like a Zoom call, I'm probably going to check out or just put it in my ear. But if it's a visual medium, you got to make it lively. So yeah.
And another thing that you did so well, Sam, was you did it so consistently. So it was like you knew at 2 p.m. you and Dave were going to be on there chatting. You didn't know what to expect. Like, what was that hat going to be? And you did it so consistently, like that you got sucked in. So I think it was that consistency that was really important as well from the whole thing.
And I think you have to learn to show your passion. I think the one thing, you have to have a huge amount of energy. You have to almost push that energy into the screen. I use my hands a lot. I am quite kind of I have started wearing makeup more than I've ever worn in my life, which has been slightly disturbing. Apparently, makeup goes out of date after 4 years, someone told me. Well, skin's not looking so great at the moment. But also t-shirts. I have all these just weird booze t-shirts that I've had for years, and suddenly people were like, not commenting about anything I was talking about, were like, that was a great t-shirt. Actually, that became my Sam's hat. It was, what t-shirt will I wear today? Because that is something, and humor. I think we're so used to presenting very, bam, 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 and actually humor is so important, especially when people are struggling and they need a little light in their lives. Just making a stupid joke or doing something goofy, as Sam said, it transports you for a moment out of your kind of normal world, and actually it's engaging with people as if you know them. I'm your best friend. That's who I am. You can ask me anything, you can talk to me about anything. I have to be approachable, and I think that's kind of some of the things that I've learned over the last, I don't even know how many months now.
Stanley, what attracts you then? If you're participating in one of these events, what arrests you? What makes you go, "Oh, that works"?
When I listen to all of you three, you have been working digital for a while now, a couple of months, and in my ears, you have done very good things, unique things, and for me, this is new for me, so I cannot answer directly now what I should do, because we just canceled the fair for 1.5, 2 months ago, and we are struggling to find new dates. So the digital thing is pretty new for me. Yeah. So I'm learning. So I'm listening and learning right now. So that's my answer.
Stanley, you can just email Dawn and she'll
Yeah.
tell you how to get
Yeah. I mean,
2 hours of content out of your suppliers.
I'm writing down everything right now.
And I think that's the thing, we got to help each other. And honestly, Stanley, if you want to email me, I'm super
Yeah,
happy for anyone to ask,
absolutely.
because we went through such a learning curve. We did 24 hours of rum before we did 8 days of whiskey. So
Yeah.
we built up such a rapid amount of knowledge in this sector. And I think what we have to do right now is we have to help each other, and that's the only way that we can do this. And I'm super happy for anyone to ask me any questions.
Absolutely. I will call you. And today I run 9 fairs. I have 5 wine festivals, wine fairs, 2 sparkling and champagne fairs, and 2 beer and whiskey fairs. So we have a lot to do.
Well,
but we don't know.
Virtual champagne show at the end of this month.
Yeah, okay. And we had our last the first champagne in Stockholm, 7th of March, the week before the hell broke loose. So we managed to have one sparkling fair this year in March. Yeah.
As someone who has been at more whiskey shows than almost anybody, maybe Sam's been at more, but you've been to a lot. Were you getting a bit weary of the format anyway? I mean, did things need to change? That whole let's get a big venue and people standing behind tables pouring drams, etc., 10 seconds to speak to one person saying the same thing over and over again on a loop for 5 days in succession. Did things need to change?
I'm sorry, who was that for, Dave?
For me,
Yeah.
It does definitely get exhausting, right? And saying that same thing on a loop. It's lovely to be there. It's lovely at the festivals. It's lovely to see everybody. But you can for sure start to go into autopilot. And I mean, I've stood there and said something and been like, did I just say that twice, or am I just imagining I said that? Or like, and even just presenting, there's been times when presenting to a room full of people in a masterclass at a festival where I've said something and I've kind of had an echo in my brain where I was like, did I say that already? Oh no, it was yesterday I said that. Oh no, it was like an hour ago I said that. So I'm finding with this format, it's been different. I'm really excited to kind of explore how whiskey festivals can change. It's, Stanley, so tough. I mean, I've got a lot of empathy for you and for the situation that you're in, but I mean, we do have a wealth of expertise and people who've gone through it, like with Dawn. So, and I'm really excited. This is a lovely thing to see you guys connect virtually over what the potential could be. I did a recording a couple of days ago for Oslo Whisky Festival. So they're having an in-person festival. I think they're doing seminars with about 100 people in each one. They've got kind of set drams, and then they're showing videos from people kind of presenting for each of the drams. So there's like a mix, I think, that can get people together and then have some virtual chats and some people kind of beaming into the festival as well. And it's like we talked about earlier, having less travel, better for the environment, better for the world.
I actually feel sorry for my suppliers next year because I already have ideas. And when I have ideas, everyone's going to suffer. So, like, I'm totally changing Whiskey Show next year.
Oh, God.
But you're right. We got to change it up. We're too boring.
Yeah.
Damn, I don't want to be boring. Like, I want to go out there and change the world. Why would you not? Let's just mix it up. Go rogue.
But why were they boring, Don?
Because we were in a set piece. Like, look, Dave and I, we spent, and I love Whiskey Parrots. I absolutely love it, and I've always had an amazing time. And Dave and I spent 2 days going around Whiskey Live Paris last year, and then we went straight into Whiskey Show. or the other way around. I can't even remember anymore now. I think it was the other way around. We've done Whisky Show and then we've gone into Whisky Live Paris. It's normally the other way around. And I just kind of felt that I was seeing the same things. And I want to be different. I want to make it different for everyone. You know, my show should be different from Paris. I love the way I'm like, it's my show. It's no longer Sekinda's show. It's just my show. But, you know, you have to keep reinventing yourself. If you don't reinvent yourself, then you stand still. And I think it's a really great challenge. And, you know, I think Sam will probably echo what I'm saying, because, you know, the one thing that I think Master and Malt have always done really well is being really inventive and creative and things. And that's got to carry through into festivals. I mean, Sam, I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, it is funny that we get comfortable with the cookie cutter format. It's a proven thing, and whiskey shows, whether in Taipei or Toronto, end up looking the same and feeling the same. And ignoring the predatory males I've seen at work at these shows, I think that there are a lot of other reasons that these shows have to change, not just for the protection of our colleagues and things like that. I think when it's a business, when a whiskey show is a business, or any of these festivals is exclusively a business rather than a gathering of like-minded people, the more people you get through the door, the more revenue is created. The more master classes you have, the more money people make. And that can be a problem. First of all, it detracts from the experience of the user, the person who's there trying to engage with the ambassador or the whiskey maker, or in some cases, the safety of the presenters. And then you're mixing that with alcohol. It's just, what? Not so. And then the next bit is, as Dawn's pointing to, is this innovation and this invention. We would do master classes. You would show up and say, okay, here's a whiskey. We're going to go from left to right, handcrafted. Cool. That's wonderful. And I still go to tastings like that, and I'm grateful to be at them. But now there's the opportunity to have live music and to have a poetry reading and to take your camera around a distillery and give someone the ability to be at Balvenie Distillery. They'll never get to Scotland, let alone see their favorite distillery. Now they can in this way. And so in terms of, it sort of relates back to what you're asking about, how will the ambassadorial role change? We're all more 360 individuals than just the public-facing version of ourselves, and now we can be, in a way, people who are in advocacy can do more of that. We have a forum here to create art. I know a colleague of Gemma's was making stop motion animation films that were absolutely incredible, and he would never have the ability, really, or the license to do that in his everyday job, but because he was locked down, he could explore this other artistic skill. It's just super cool. And Gemma's a storyteller. Gemma got really into that, and running, and becoming, and wellness, and all the other elements that are a more rounded version of that person we're buying into. As Dawn said, when we buy and support a product, we're buying into that whole, the character and personality that is also embodied, obviously, in the ambassador.
So it's almost like a forced change, which is interesting, because I was just thinking, and I agree 100% with what you're saying there, Sam, but there was nothing to stop having a poetry reading in a masterclass in the past. There was nothing to stop somebody, standing there with the guitar. But I mean, I remember suggesting some of these things, but I've always been knocked back. It was maybe that the industry was just stuck in this.
You didn't want Sam playing music. That was probably why we said no, Dave.
Well, that's just cruel. Accurate, but cruel.
I did get away with it at Balvenie. So William Grant's a slightly different company than many, but I did get away with being the more full version of myself. And I think all of my ambassador team, the ambassador team there, and across Glenfiddich too, were always encouraged and empowered to be that. But admittedly, that is unusual.
Stanley, how would you like to see shows change? And are you thinking of changing shows up? People are talking about, let's be more creative, not just lots of glasses, and let's make it more multimedia, more bizarre, more immersive.
Yeah. I think in the short term, we will have in the future smaller shows, mm-hmm. smaller festivals, like pop-ups in Sweden. And the big ones, it will take a while, and I'm not sure if the big ones will come back as the size as we have had before. the smaller pop-ups will yeah, like a road show in Sweden,
Yeah.
maybe.
Yeah.
We are talking about that thing in the future.
Good idea. Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. The one perhaps downside, and kind of playing devil's advocate on this, this is my Gemma. You've been working since 7 o'clock this morning online. This is my I've been on every night. Dawn. Yeah, we've all been doing a lot of this stuff. Is there a danger of not just us becoming over zoomed, but the audience becoming over zoomed? Because everybody inevitably is piling onto these platforms.
I think for sure there's an element of digital fatigue, right? Like we want to get away from our screens and get away from being on screen. But something like, so I found, Sam had been kind of making the Boutique podcast for a while before we went into lockdown, but like there was episodes I'd missed, and like downloading them and going for a walk or a run and listening to something like that. So I found myself consuming like a lot more podcasts and just content, just things that I can just listen to and tune out and like go for a walk and be outside and have something to listen to. So yeah, I think.
And there's a bit of that question, Dave, that's sort of saying, "Oh, there's already plenty of music. We don't need more."
There is. I'm just thinking. I just wonder if there is this element because this is a new concept to people, and it is quite a tiring thing to constantly engage, deliver, but also actually receive. Whether people will just become bored, or because there is so much choice.
And
the message gets lost.
We did see that, Dave. We did see fatigue over kind of the virtual things that we were doing.
72 hours, Dawn.
Sam, I'll come to the next one. But I think it's natural. It's like anything. If you have too many whiskey festivals, physical, you're gonna have the same thing. It's identical. I love the way Sam has now left his video. But it's natural to have that, whatever you do, whether it's physical or there were too many whiskey shows out there and too many people trying to do things. I think that whether it's virtual or physical, there's a glut of everything, and that's why you have to do things to make yourself stand out and be different. And I don't think it's necessarily that's the problem for the person that's running it. It's not the problem for, if you're a consumer and you're really engaged in something, then you'll be engaged. But you just have to be extra fucking awesome, how do you make yourself the best? And that's a challenge to the people running events. Running events, Stanley, running events is hard. It's exhausting. It's tiring. You got to keep on thinking of how to make it different. And
all the time. All the time.
You reinvent the wheel, don't you?
That's right.
I'm going to take a couple of questions here. If you are asking questions, just type them in. Jan's going to be sifting them for their brilliance. But yeah, do type in questions. One from Rosalind here. I think time slots and the volume of exhibitors also contribute to the overall vibe of the shows. They end up a race for guys to drink as much as possible without experiencing the brands properly. Brand owners, Gemma, Sam, what do you think of that? The virtual show gives a pause and controls drinking.
Yeah, I think that's an important one, that like responsible consumption as well, because let's face it, you go to a whiskey show and there's so many treats and there's so many things that you want to try. And there's like fatigue from that, right? There's only, Master Blender will do like sit and taste, knows 25 whiskeys in one sitting and then take a break and then come back. But if you're in a show, you're kind of going around and you could kind of nose and have a sip of double that, kind of ticking off all the whiskeys that you want to try that are available. So yeah, that opportunity to kind of, like Dawn said, you still have packs available, so you can still go on and experience some of the stuff from the whiskey show and taste them at your own pace, instead of just being like, right, there's so much I want to try and I have 3 hours, like where am I going to start? I'm gonna wait, and then I'm gonna have the 40-year-old Highland Park at the end, and that's gonna be my special dram. But then at that point, you can't taste anything, you can't smell anything.
I mean, the good thing with virtual is you can't see them drunk. That's the difference. There are no carpet tiles to throw up on, and there's to be charged £10 a carpet tile. They throw up on their own carpet, not mine.
But in general, I mean, the kind of subtext to that really is you get the physical act of actually wanting to join one of these things. I mean, you've already got a more engaged participant and a more responsible drinking participant, maybe. What do you think, Dawn?
Oh, yeah, 100%. I mean, to engage in something we did, I mean, when we did the 24-hour rum tasting, I mean, that was, when I say
responsible, yeah,
24 hours, and there wasn't tasting, it was talks and stuff, but we stayed up for 24 hours and talked rum.
Yeah.
If you were going to have people watching that, and we had between, even in the twilight hours, we had between 140 people watching at any one time. And immediately you were talking to a very, very different consumer there, because if you are cray-cray enough to stay up for 24 hours, then you're passionate and you want to learn and you want to understand. Same as if you're going to spend 8 days listening to us talk whiskey, you know, you're already engaging with a very different audience. And actually that one-on-one time, even if you're on a session and you only had, say, 8 people, that 8 people who are, those 8 people who are passionate actually multiply, because it becomes 8 people that were really engaged by what you were saying actually goes out and times by 10. Because for every one person that then recommends to their friends, and what we have to really, really understand, folks, is that the biggest purchasing power is not price point, it is not reviews, it is recommendation from other people. So if I can talk to 8 people and then they go, each one of them goes out and tells their friends that they loved, I don't know, Frey Brothers. And then they tell their friend that they like that. And then they tell their friend. That's actually 80 people I've reached. And that's what we've got to keep in our damn heads. You know, if you're at a whiskey show and you got some guy, you know, he can't remember what he drank. My God, he's just knocked down half of my stands. I mean, he doesn't even know his own name. I mean, that's a very, very different experience.
Yeah, that is a very, very interesting and perceptive comment. I think.
Okay.
Do you want to pick up on that?
Yes, it's related to like these observations we've had, and thanks for that one, Don. That's going to make me laugh. I think about it again later. The something that happens online that doesn't happen at a real world whiskey show is multiple brand masterclasses or tastings. You know, if you go to a whiskey show, you'll go to a Glenmorangie tasting and they'll tell you, we were the first to do this. You go to a Dalmore tasting, they'll tell you, we're the best at doing this. And those claims, whether they're true or not, the audience is subjected to them. When you're in a room of your peers of a tasting pack that you can buy from the Whiskey Exchange of different brands from different companies, somehow the ambassadors and the makers are kept honest. It was a totally new thing to me in these early tastings. And this probably isn't even April. This is later than that when companies started getting into this. But in May, June, there were several tastings that I took part in or I watched online, because again, I'm still a whiskey geek, that some of the claims that I'd heard some people make before, they were unable to make because they were in the company of the maker who actually did it. You know, it was a great leveler of marketing bullshit. And I was really grateful for that. I thought that was a cool thing. One other observation, probably Dawn can relate to this in terms of the online retail world, is before, when lockdown was threatening and, you know, everyone's buying toilet paper and the things that they need to make rye bread and shit.
Fever True Tommy.
It was scary because we saw our numbers at Master of Malt, and I think we could see it in our local Tesco's, our local supermarkets here in the UK. People were buying their comfort brands while they were buying toilet paper and rye flour. And so in doing so, we weren't seeing a lot of online sales and we weren't seeing a lot of experimentation. People were buying, you know, comfort brands that they could get at the supermarket while they were getting their other necessities for lockdown. But what happened within 14 days, I think, within 2 weeks, when those bottles ran out at people's homes, was finally, you know, I've always wanted to get into cognac. I'm going to buy the cognac tasting set from the Whiskey Exchange, or from Master of Malt, or from wherever you get it from, hard to find. And people took not only the educated, they took a more responsible approach to the drink in terms of self-improvement, the same way that some people took out making sourdough or knitting or whatever, or running. People took up becoming a connoisseur of Scotch whiskey. I always want to get into Scotch. I've never been to a tasting because I work at nights. I can't go to events, whatever it might be. And we saw a massive pickup. I'm sure the Whiskey Exchange saw too, massive pickup in real discerning experimentation. People buying not the people really taking risks on 80 to 100 pound bottles that they never tried before.
Same thing happened in Sweden. In the beginning of March, people bought things that they recognize, cheaper products, but after 1 month, people bought more quality products, like handcraft beer from Sweden and expensive whiskey from Scotland.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with both of you. I mean, we really saw the consumer actually stepping out of their comfort box, and I'm really excited about that. I'm so excited that we have a new consumer that wants to learn, they want to understand, and they want to try. And that is what me as a buyer, because actually apparently that is my role, that's what's exciting to me, because that is what I want to do. I want to find the quirky, the new, the interesting, and introduce customers to that. And I think now we have a much more receptive customer to that.
Yeah, and it's someone who maybe would never be caught dead at a whiskey show. God forbid they should mispronounce La Prohague or do something that, because it's risky. We're snobby. The category itself by default is about knowledge and becomes snobby by nature. It's not. It's a welcoming industry, but nonetheless, that's the perception. So someone who might want to get into it is really deterred to even try, or for other reasons. They don't feel they look the part of a whiskey drinker, or there's all sorts of, and this really broke down that wall, which I thought was amazing.
Something else is a question or a comment that's just come in from Juliet, who says, from an ambassador point of view, I'd say it also allowed us to do virtual tastings in places you might not be able to justify going to before, or didn't have time to go to. I mean, what do we think of that, Sam? No, it's okay.
I love this comment. I really love this comment from Juliet, because that's been true for me. I've been able to work with colleagues across the world who I've never normally work with or get to visit and host tastings for them, and for like trade in those markets, work with bartenders in those markets who would never normally get to. Like, for example, I did a collaboration with our team in Nairobi, and I mean, I dream of going to Nairobi. I've never been to Nairobi before, but I've never. It's like a tiny market for Balvenie. There's no way I would be supported to go there by the business. So having that opportunity to kind of work with them, and we collaborated with a bar there who made like a bespoke cocktail and tasting pack and sent out, and this was like really early on in lockdown as well, and that opportunity for me was so exciting. So for sure, this is a really great point from Juliet, that we can work with people and go to places virtually that we would never normally have the opportunity to.
So almost the last question then. Is this new area more advantageous for larger brands, William Grant's, for example, because you got deeper pockets, greater reach, bigger budgets, etc.? Or on the other hand, and this is really basically Gemma and Sam here, does it create actually more of a level playing field that allows every brand to actually speak on a more or less equal basis? Who wants to pick that one up first? Sam.
Well, yeah, of course. Dawn already tooted our horn, but I'm really proud of what the Whiskey Show and the Whiskey Exchange achieved with that seminar. I joke about it being, festival being 72 hours, and how it was such a big ask of all these brands to bring that much amount of content. But what an insane opportunity! I mean, we think about when I was at Grant's or Friends of Diageo or Pernod, when you create content or make a new film or video, the brand team has to approve it. It goes back and forth with an agency, has a massive expense and a massive timeline. So the big companies probably suffered quite a bit in Dawn's format, because they had content that was 7 months old that this brand manager, the current brand manager didn't approve, didn't have their stamp on it. So no one, for vanity reasons or other reasons, doesn't want to approve it. It has Sam Simmons, has the old ambassador in the video. You can't show that now, you know? Yeah. Or Mama, that's a good example. That's a very good example. No idea what I was talking about.
Gemma, do you want to pick this up?
So cute.
It is so cute. Yeah, I mean, a level playing field, or is it more advantageous to guys such as yourself with more reach?
Yeah, I think I'd say level playing field. I mean, when you're in this format, there is like a real sort of leveler, isn't there? There's not like you can't hide behind big budgets in the same way. You can, I mean, yeah, you can. I think I'm just trying to think of, like, I'm working just now on trying to create this live experience from Boveni, and I would love to be able to bring in a film crew, and yeah, I could go to the brand team and ask for a budget to do that, but we can't, because we have to protect, we have to make whiskey at the end of the day. So there's limited amount of people that you can actually bring to the distillery. So in fact, like, I've been forced to learn these skills and learn how to broadcast from the distillery to kind of protect the site. So our number one priority is the production, and at the end of the day, we're making whiskey. That's the most important thing. So like, you're stuck with me on my phone at the distillery, instead of like a film crew kind of coming in and putting it out professionally. But so yeah, it's a leveler for sure. There's less that we can hide behind.
Yeah, I guess that's where I was going with that, Dave. Sorry, is that we don't have, where I am now, a boutique whiskey company or Character Vial, we don't have the budget to hire a crew. So we would never be able to do that. And it's not a criticism of those who can, it's just a different thing. So of course the playing field is absolutely leveled, because we had the content recorded mostly on my phone or via Zoom call or Google Hangouts or whatever the fuck platform we were using that we could use for Don's show. We had it. We didn't need a brand approval because I made it. So I think it was a real advantage for the smaller businesses when this festival happened, rather than the larger ones. Larger ones probably were crippled by the timelines.
And I think, it's about being agile. And this is where maybe the big brands need to wake the fuck up. That actually they need to be able to start moving quicker. They need to start being able to be more reactive, because, and what we found is, we've been doing interviews with people. We've done quite a lot of content. And actually the ones that are the least effective, the ones that are the least, are ones that people, where they're trying to stick so tightly to the brand marketing strategy, because the marketeer told me I must talk about this and it must be approved. And actually that's why they come across as really artificial. They come across as actually something that's not real. And it's very, very evident on a screen, much more so than it would be in a class, because in a class you're talking, you there's a little bit less, but when actually you're on a screen, it is very, very easy to tell if someone's talking shite or just talking marketing crap. And it's for me, the big brands are the ones that need to wake the fuck up, because they will be the biggest losers in this game, because they just don't have the agility, they don't have the foresight. They have to plan 6 months in advance, they have to plan 12 months in advance. No. Plan now, because otherwise you lose everything. And that's something that I'm actually, I'm very interested to see what they'll do. And I have a huge amount of respect for actually the William Grant guys, because they are much more reactive, they are much more forward thinking, and I think that's great. But there are other brands that will not be able to do this, because they can't think outside the box and they can't be creative, because they're so bound by, it has to go through 9,000 people to be approved. Jesus Christ, just go rogue. Just do it. It's going to come off so much better.
Yeah.
In the long run.
It ties in with a question just got in from Chris Ratcliffe here. How much extra work has remote opportunities caused? And second question following up from that, will remote tastings now become a permanent thing? Yeah. With better facilities and specialist talent brought in to run them. Who would like to pick that one up? Extra work, Dawn. Specialist talent.
extra work, 100%. If I tell you I get up and I'm in work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and oftentimes because we're doing Zooms, I don't leave till 8 o'clock at night. Sometimes later, over Whisky show, I didn't leave the building until 10 o'clock. 100%, you know, and I had to be back at 7 o'clock to do my day job. It's hugely challenging, and it's a lot of work. In terms of new talent, I think it will allow us to discover the talent that is already there and help foster the talent we already have within our own businesses. And I'm not going to bring anyone in to do it, because we have an amazing team here, absolutely incredible. We have some of the best knowledge in the industry within our four walls. So why would I bring anyone in? We're lucky with that. I think in terms of like the platform, so Hopin has actually used us as a test case for them. So, you know, I think we're game changing on multiple levels. And I think it is, look, I'm going to take the longest freaking vacation when this damn shit is over that you can imagine. Apparently I have 40 days vacation to take, so.
Anyways, I'm conscious of time ticking away. Anyone else want to pick up on that? You know, that how much more work, and do you think the nature of this beast is going to become more, dare I say, professional and slick?
In a way, I don't want it to become fully professional and slick, because it loses some of the charm, right? Like, I think there's an authenticity in us being vulnerable, in putting ourselves out there and kind of being brave and just embracing the technology. So if it becomes too slick, it's why people love reality TV. Like, it's there's a rawness to it, and like also like a banality to it in a way sometimes that people are drawn into. So I think, yeah, if all of our tastings and experiences and shows become super produced and really slick, it'll lose a lot of charm.
Yeah. Anybody else on that one?
Well, of course it's more work, but then when you start measuring that against being away from your family, being away from your loved ones or your home or the comforts of home, that has a major tax on us. I know most ambassadors that I've ever worked with or known spent a lot of time investing in wellness and grounding themselves, because it's tough pulling yourself here and there around the world. So while that's missing, and there's more work in creating the online content, I'm not sure if it's more than it was before, especially if you're strictly an ambassador. For me, I'm not in advocacy. I'm not an ambassador anymore. It's obviously, it comes naturally to me. It's my roots. It's what I spent the last 10 years before I came to Adam Brands doing, and it's the creativity that I love. I thrive in it. I always prioritize that. And you know that everyone knows that to-do list beside the one that you never get through. Anything creative on there, I always bang that out somehow. So, but yes, it's not my core role, but it's exciting, it's rewarding, and it reminds us what we're doing here. And I think Gemma said it, Stanley said it, you've said it, Dave, and I know Don definitely said it tonight. It's about the people we connect with and remembering that's what brought us here. It's not the drink. Yes, I love whiskey. I love the history and the stories, but it's the people that surround that glass that brought me here and keep me here.
Yeah, and it is, you know, it's a pain, almost like a physical pain, not to be able to see these people. You know, and Tor from Aurora there, it was saying, you know, it's meeting people in person is what we all miss the most. But you know, we're in the situation that we're in at the moment. So a ridiculous crystal ball question to finish things off. Given that we don't know what the fuck's going to happen tomorrow, this is almost an impossible question to answer. But 5 years' time, what do you think a whiskey show and the role of an ambassador is going to be like compared to what it is today? Dawn.
Sorry,
I love having this power, you know?
I love it. I think there'll be a hybrid, because the one thing we're never going to replace is human contact. You know, I love hugs. Hugs keep me alive, and I miss hugs. I miss a Dave Broom hug more than anything in the world. And, you know, I love seeing people at Whisky Show. It feeds me. It really brings me up. There's nothing better than human contact. And at the end of the day, we can't lose sight of that. We cannot become these robots that just talk to a screen and have no social interaction, because actually what I hope this does is it removes the power to some extent of Instagram and Facebook, because we have to talking to people is key. And I hope that we miss it so much that actually it brings us back to a new normal that is maybe back to an older normal. But I do think virtual's here to stay. We're 100% embracing it. I think it allows us to reach a new audience, a different audience, and a greater audience. And for that, I'm, really grateful that actually this has happened to force us into a new way of thinking, and to move us out of our comfort zone. I think the next 5 years are going to be the hardest 5 years of our lifetime, but I think that also potentially could be the most rewarding 5 years of our lifetime. So it's up to those who choose to take the challenge and to move forward. And that's the challenge. It's who's going to embrace that and move it.
Correct. Gemma, in conclusion, where do you think we're going to be in 5 years' time?
Oh, I think Dawn captured that perfectly. And I would love to see in 5 years' time that we really, we're really going to physically embrace each other, and enjoy those moments and being together and cherish them, because having this distance from colleagues that we love, friends, family, in 5 years, we've gone, how many months now, and we're facing X amount more. We don't know how long this is going to go on for. So I think I'd like to think in 5 years' time, we'll really, really, truly be present and cherish those times when we are together in person.
Thank you. Stanley, thoughts of where you're going to be down the line?
Same thing that Dawn said and Gemma said, to hug each other, to go to a festival without any pandemic or something like that. And we had a plan for goal for 3 years ago that 2023 be one of the Northern Europe's best beer and whiskey festival, and we are planning to head on that too.
Great, fantastic. Sam, final word for once for you.
Thank.
No, the final word. 5 years' time.
Yeah.
What's the show going to look like?
I might go backwards in time, because 5 years' time, and with this perspective of this pandemic, you start reconsidering a lot of choices in all of our lives. And Gemma mentioned family and friends, and my brother always jokes about he's never going to let his daughters study abroad because they'll never come home, which is the story of my life. My brother just went to the hospital last week, and I wasn't there, and it sucks. And you think about your family and your parents, and Gemma mentioned her mother and my father, and we take for granted so much. Let's never do that again. Let's hug hard, and let's live closer to home.
Yeah, cool. On those notes, I can't think of a better way to wrap this up, guys. Thank you so much. It's been a tough time for all of us, but I think the positive stuff that's come out of tonight has been quite incredible. Thank you for all your efforts and trying to keep this community together. In fact, succeeding in keeping this amazing community together. If I could hug you, I would. I'll go like that now. I'll embrace the camera. Well, I will see you in a couple of weeks, Dawn. But
absolutely,
socially distanced, of course. But
business meeting, Dave. Business meeting.
Business meeting. Yeah.
Talk about Whisky Show 2021.
Yeah, there we are. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing discussion. The comments have been fantastic. Everybody's really, really happy. That is the formal element of the evening over. I think Jan is lurking here. He probably would like to speak to all of you afterwards, panelists, because he's quite stern, like Split Santa Claus. So if you could hang on, but everyone else, thank you so much for joining the World Whisky Talk. We're probably going to take a wee hiatus now because festive season, everything else. But we shall return in the new year with more amazing content. Will it better tonight? I wonder if it will. Stay safe, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Bye, everyone.